Hey everybody, today I'm going to be answering your most frequently asked questions. So let's get started. And I just want to say that I do have quite a list here. I get a lot of questions in my comment section and I see a lot of questions on Facebook. So I put a list together and I'm going to be answering those today. If you have a specific question that you're looking for an answer to, check the description box below. I have listed all of the questions I'm going to be answering and I have put the timestamp for when I'll be answering that question. So if you don't want to go through the whole video waiting to have that one question that you have answered, you can just go in the description, find that question, scroll on to that timestamp and hear me just answer that one question. So let's start. First question is, how long does scent last? So this is going to be pertaining to how long does it last in a vehicle once you take it out of the package and hang it. So this is going to depend a lot on your fragrance oil and sometimes the type of beads, but most of the beads that I've gotten are really similar and perform on the same level. I haven't ever bought a batch of beads that I just thought, wow, these are so much better than, you know, this last supply that I've gotten or this other company that I've ordered from. So I'm gonna say that 90% of what factors into how long it will last once you hang it is gonna be the oil. It depends on the quality of oil. Some fragrances are stronger than others. So if you've got a stronger fragrance, that one's gonna tend to linger a lot longer than maybe a lighter fragrance. And it's also gonna depend on the temperature, where you live, how dry it is, all of these things are gonna factor in. So generally though, you should be getting at the very least 2 weeks out of the freshie. You could get up to 6 weeks, 2 months, depending on the fragrance and the temperature. Temperature has a lot to do with it. If it's super hot outside, it's gonna cause those beads to, the pores in the beads to open up and expand, which allows that fragrance to come out. So you might notice in summer months, they're very strong right out of the bag and for the first couple of days, and then they mellow out significantly. Whereas in the fall or even in the winter, it might be a lighter fragrance, but it's going to last a lot longer. Like the fragrance will hang around much longer. It's just not gonna be hit you in the face. I've also noticed that I've had some up in my car that I've put in there and it seemed like I couldn't smell it after a couple of days, and then it just got left hanging, and then a couple of days later, suddenly I could smell it again. So if you've had one in your car and it's only been a couple of days and you're thinking, oh my gosh, it only lasted a couple of days, give it some time. You may also go nose blind to it, especially if you're making these things, you're constantly working around the fragrance. I think it dulls your senses a little bit. People definitely think that they're stronger than I think they are, but I am also working with these things in my face constantly, and my nose gets accustomed to the different fragrances. So when I have a newer fragrance and I put it in my car, it seems to last longer than one of the fragrances that I have produced a lot of. So 3 to 6 weeks, at the very least 2 weeks should be, if they're not lasting for at least 2 weeks, I would say maybe not use that particular oil that you're using. If it's a fragrance that you really like, maybe try it from a different company to see if theirs lasts longer. So next question, how long does the scent last once it's in the bag? So how early in advance can I make one and let it sit before I sell it? So the longest I've ever had one sitting in the bag is 3 months. But after 3 months, I will say that the one that was in there still smelled just as strong and lasted in my car just the same as any others made the day before would have. If anything, I kind of feel like the fragrance was stronger after 3 months, and this may have just been because I wasn't working, like I said before, I wasn't working with that fragrance anymore, so my nose wasn't accustomed to it. And so therefore I think that my nose wasn't used to the smell, and so it smelled stronger than if I had been working with that fragrance for the last 3 months and had it constantly in my face. So adding to how long will scent last, let's talk about after you've mixed your beads and you're just letting them cure, or you've had them on the shelf maybe for a month or two, you know, how long can they sit on that shelf before they're no good anymore? This one also I think is going to depend on your oil, but I have seen some posts where they're saying, you know, my fall scents from last year, and this is like 10 months before, are still just as strong and are good. So I haven't kept any beads around that long, just in the jar sitting. So I don't know exactly how long it would last and how long you can keep them before you bake them and sell them. But it is quite a long time. I know it's at least several months. What I tend to do is I make smaller batches. I mix about 12 ounces of beads into each fragrance, and that kind of helps me get rid of any older beads before I mix my next batch. I don't want to make, you know, just an absorbent amount of one fragrance and then it turns out nobody wants that fragrance, and then I just got them sitting there for too long, and after a while I just don't feel comfortable using them after a certain amount of time. But honestly, if you open it up and it smells fine, smells just as strong, then I would say go ahead and use them. You can also test this if you want to start, if you have a fragrance from the previous season and you want to see if you can make them that season. Just make a small one for your car, test it in your own car to see if it will last. Okay, next question. So I've had a lot of people say that they have a lot of difficulty getting them out of the cookie cutters, that they stick. Now, you can use a small amount of cooking spray. I don't really necessarily like the idea of cooking spray. I don't know why. They do make a mold release spray that you can get at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. If I were going to use something, that's probably what I would buy. But for me, I don't like adding to the cost or, you know, my overhead. So I've never bought it, I've never used it, but a lot of people swear by it. What I do is I don't let them cool for too long. While they're still kind of warm and flexible, if you push at the very edges of the cookie cutter, like on the very edge of the freshie while it's in the cutter, as close to the edges as you can get with both thumbs, and just push a little bit, then they tend to come out really easily. On the other side of that, you can let them cool until they are completely room temperature, and typically the beads will shrink a little bit and it'll separate from the cutter itself. So the only other thing that could cause it to stick really, really hard to a cookie cutter is if it was baked too long. If you overbake and it's too melted, they stick a lot worse. And if you've forgotten about it and let it, like I have before, let them boil. Literally they were bubbling and boiling when I remembered that they were in the oven. They will not come out of the, you will ruin your cookie cutters trying to get them out. So be cautious not to overbake. Another question I get is it safe to use your kitchen oven? So the oven that you would use to prepare food. Now, if you're concerned about this, then I would suggest getting a toaster oven. I don't know the science behind it or what's in the beads or what they do when you melt them. If it's really a concern, then I would just get a small toaster oven and bake them in that. I personally use my kitchen oven. I haven't found a problem using it. The fragrance does not stick to the oven. So, you know, next time when you go to bake something food-wise, I don't ever get that residual fragrance oil scent from it. It just dissipates completely. I know that if you have birds, you do not want to bake these with birds. I don't know if it's fragrance oil or the beads, but I have seen a lot of people discuss that they've had birds die because they were baking them in their home where the birds were. It's really, really bad for them. So I would, given that, if it's harmful to any living creature, I'm sure that there's some level of chemical that's being released in the air that may also not be good for humans. So just be aware of that if you're really concerned about it. Where did you get your mini cutters? A lot of people have asked where I got my mini cutters from. They're the ones that I use inside the Texas shape or the jars just to like give that little punch out kind of shape. I got all of mine from Hobby Lobby. Some of them are in the clay section with the clay cookie cutters. This is the clay cutters. I guess they're not cookie cutters, but clay cutters. And then there's another section near the fondant. So in the baking section, they are little mini fondant cutters. So those two departments in Hobby Lobby is where I got mine from. Do you have to cure your beads once they're dry? So let's talk about the difference between drying and curing. Drying or soaking is after you've added the oil and the beads are wet. So while they're soaking or drying, they're still sticking to the sides of the jar. You're waiting for the plastic, for the little beads to absorb the oil. Once they're no longer sticking to the jar and they're dry, that's when curing time starts. And generally, if you're gonna cure, it's at least between 7 to 10 days. Some people go all the way up to 2 to 3 weeks. And this is a topic that's heavily disputed on whether or not it's necessary or it does anything at all. I personally can tell a difference. I don't know if that's all in my head or not, but for me, it's what's another 7 days? You know, I usually have plenty of other beads that I'm working with. So do I need to get into a jar immediately? Not typically. So I have the time to let them sit for a little while before I use them. I always mark on the jar what date they were dry, so I can just, you know, keep checking them and count 7 days from that day, and I know when I can use them. And I only do 7 days. That's the minimum I would say to do. And I've used beads, like obviously I don't go through all of my beads in one day for that fragrance. So they do sit another week or 2 or 3 sometimes. And after that point, I never really notice them getting stronger or them lasting longer once they're hung in my car. Some people say that allowing them to cure, you know, curing is a chemical process and nothing else, you know, chemically, there are no other chemical reactions that happen once the beads are dry. And that may be true. The thing that I think about curing, here's my theory on it, or where my head goes, is that when you're drying the beads, they absorb into the plastic. They're gonna absorb to that first layer of plastic. And then so when you bake, all of that fragrance oil is just kind of sitting on the surface of the beads. And when you bake them, the concept that comes into my head is that a lot more of that oil is going to be released. So when you let them cure or you let them sit for another 7 days after they're dry, it really allows the oil to keep seeping deeper into each bead so that when you bake them, that fragrance isn't all coming out, which is what I feel like makes the Freshies last longer. Once again, this could all be in my head and I could be completely wrong. But you know, what's another 7 days if it really does make a difference? And if it doesn't make a difference, once again, what's another 7 days? Can you bake on parchment paper? Should you bake on parchment paper? This is a personal preference. Yes, you can use parchment paper, or you can bake directly on the cookie sheet. That is completely up to you. How much do you sell them for? Okay, so what I sell them for may not be what you need to sell them for. This is gonna depend on your area, on the cost of your supplies, on your time. All of those things factor in. So a good way to start figuring out what your price should be is to break down how much it costs for you, depending on the supplies that you're buying. How much does it cost in supplies to make one? So you would figure up how many Freshies can I make with a pound of beads? And then you calculate how much that pound of beads cost you to buy. And then you divide it by how many Freshies you made with that 1 pound. That will give you the cost of the beads. You do the same thing for the fragrance oil. You add your bags, your labels, everything that you use to make these, you add that up. And then you need to consider the amount of time you spent on it. If you're just doing a single color, quick Freshie, you just mix the beads up, pour them in the cookie cutter, bake it, and then tie a string to it, that really didn't take that much time. But if you're spending a lot of time separating colors, you know, dividing colors up, painting afterwards, decorating afterwards, you're adding bows, you need to calculate all of that up in your price. So for instance, I have some that I sell, most of what I sell is, I sell them for $8 a piece. Now I do have some that I sell for $12 because they're either larger and they take more beads, or they're more of my intricate designs. And so they take a lot longer for me to make, even if it doesn't use as many beads as, you know, some of the larger ones. If it's taking me a lot of time to create just one, I will increase the price on it. This is just something, and your area where you live, that will determine a little bit of, if you're selling locally, will determine what your price should be. If in your area that 12 is the lowest you see them, well then you can probably price them about that. So you don't want to shortchange yourself. If you're in a more competitive area where a lot of people make them and so they're less expensive, it would be really difficult to make sales if you priced all of them at $12 and everybody else is selling them for $7. Unless they really, really like your designs or your scents or, you know, something that you're doing personally, people are generally gonna go for the more moderately priced ones, which is understandable. So you wanna be competitive, but once again, you don't wanna shortchange yourself. And if you're selling online, then you can definitely go up in price from what your local, you know, in the local area. I wholesale to a gas station here in the town that I live. And so I have to be competitive there. My prices have to be similar to the other stores, boutiques, or gas stations that sell the same thing I am selling. I have to make sure that my price is in the same range. But online, I can sell them for a little bit more. And sometimes you have to, because most of my online sales are custom. So I charge a little bit more because I'm having to stop what I'm doing and create something. What bags do you use? What bags should I use when packaging them? So this actually is pretty important. Different types of plastic are more porous than others, and a very porous plastic basically has little openings in it. So it's not airtight. And if it's not airtight, then it's as if you're just leaving the freshie out on the table and it's not in a bag at all, and it's constantly losing scent. The type of bags that you should be looking for, there's two types that you'll see most commonly. There's polyethylene and polypropylene. Polyethylene is the one that you want to stay away from, and it's probably one of the more common ones. It's kind of what a Ziploc bag is made out of. If you can test this yourself, you can put one of your freshies in a Ziploc bag and the next day pick it up and you will be able to smell it through the bag. If you can smell it through the bag, then it's constantly letting fragrance off. It is not airtight, and that fragrance is just, it's as if you had it sitting out already. Polypropylene is the type of plastic bag that you want to look for. It is airtight. It will not allow that scent to come through. You will not be able to smell it through the bag. I use the holographic mylar bags, and some people say that they eat scent. They eat the scent. I don't think they eat the scent. I think what it is that, you know, they think that the scent is being released through the bag. But people will say stay away from those. I personally have never had a problem with them. Like I said, I had a freshie in one of my bags for 3 months and it smelled fine. You cannot smell it through the bag, which leads me to believe that the scent is not being, you know, released out of the freshie. It's not being eaten by the bag. Otherwise, you'd be able to, the bag itself would smell like whatever fragrance you put in there. But with the Mylar holographic bags, I can't smell anything through it. So if you've bought bags and you're wondering if they're the right kind, my test and my personal suggestion would just be to, once you put one in there, give it a day. If you, without opening the bag, if you can smell it through the bag, I wouldn't use those bags. If the next day you smell the bag and you can't smell it at all, then I would say those bags are okay. Can you color your beads after they've dried or cured? Do you have to add the color with the fragrance oil? No, you do not. There are some pros and cons to each way. I would say that one of the pros of adding it with the fragrance oil is that all those beads are already colored. So it just took you one time to color them and they're done. The con about that is that if you get a special order or if somebody wants, you know, a certain color with a particular fragrance, you can't do that. You're stuck with that one color unless you mix a ton of tiny jars, which works if you're doing a bulk batch and you already know what colors you're going to be putting with fragrances, or you already have something in mind, like say you're, doing some type of show and you just need to make a lot really fast. That's where adding the color with the oil really comes in handy. But when it comes to your custom orders, or when you just come up with something that you would like to create, or you're doing one at a time, it's better to add your color after your beads are cured. It allows you more freedom to create different color freshies, different style of freshies with that same fragrance. Now, you can add too much mica, and you want to be aware not to do that, because it can cause a problem with the beads not being able to stick together. You have basically put a powder barrier between them, and too much of that powder will prevent the plastic from sticking. So the beads can have an issue sticking. You shouldn't be able to shake your beads and see the dust coming off of them. Add a tiny bit at a time until you've gotten the color that you want, and be very careful not to add too much. Have you ever added 2 fragrances to 1 freshie? I personally have not, but I think it's a cool idea. If you had, lavender scented beads and lemon scented beads, and you wanted to make lemon lavender, I think it would be really cool to do 2-tone, or even just mix the beads together and then color them however you want to do it. But mixing fragrances, if they complement each other, I don't see why you couldn't. You could, like I said, just mix all of the beads together and color them all one color, or do whatever. Or you can mix one fragrance, one color, and another fragrance, another color, and blend those 2 together in the mold or in the cookie cutter, however way you want it to. So yes, definitely can be done. I've never done it, but I think it's a neat idea. Where do you get your beads? The majority of the time, get my beads from Buy It, Ship It. The only time I get beads from any other company is if I'm ordering fragrance oils from that other company. So not all companies sell the same fragrances. And sometimes I want one from somewhere else. I want a particular fragrance, so I have to order it from this other place. Well, if I'm gonna pay shipping on that, I might as well just go ahead and get my beads too. So most often, because I like most of their oils and because their beads are a great deal, I do go with Buy It, Ship It. But sometimes if I'm already gonna be ordering oil from Lone Star because I'm out of the fragrances that I buy from them, then I will just go ahead and order beads from them, so I don't have to pay 2 separate shipping costs, because it adds up quickly. Where do you get your oil? I get most of my oil from Buy It, Ship It. For me personally, the quality of their oils, they pop over other companies. They're some of my strongest fragrances, some of my longest lasting fragrances. They're not all like that, but I've ordered so many oils from them. Really can't say that I've been just completely unhappy with any of them. I have ordered from different companies, and it seems like other places it's more hit or miss. Like you could have some great ones, and then you can have some not so great ones from that same company. And Buy It, Ship It for me is like the most consistent. Like their oils are consistently strong, good oils. I ordered, like I said, from Lone Star though. Lone Star has great oils. And Flaming Candle, I recently tried them out, and I was pleased with their oils. And let's see, I think those are my 3 top favorites. So Lone Star, Buy It, Ship It, and the Flaming Candle. But I've never tried Stay Fresh with Peanut, so I can't comment on them. But I've tried some from Crimson. I've tried some from Wellington. I have tried some from Aztec, and Aztec is really, I will never order oils from Aztec again. There have just been some kind of, I had them, the oils themselves reacted really weirdly, like maybe there was something other than just fragrance oil in them. They didn't seem, most of them, like half and half, I would say. I got, out of all the oils, and I ordered a ton from them because they are lower priced, and so I was able to get more bottles. But out of everything that I got, half of them were okay. And then the other half were so light or just didn't smell right that I couldn't even use them. On top of that, I have never had my credit card information stolen before. And it happened the first time right after ordering from Aztec. And I didn't make any connection to it. I thought it's something that happens sometimes, you know, and it's just the luck of the draw. It could have happened at a gas pump. It could have happened all types of places. So got that all fixed, and then made my second order from them. And immediately after, once again, credit card information was stolen. So I did think that maybe it was from them, but when I talked to my bank, they said, well, you know, sometimes, you know, this gas pump in town and that gas pump in town are notorious for it, you know, so it could be that. And so I kind of just wrote it off, but I was already a little displeased with Aztec's oils, so I wasn't planning on ordering from them again. And then I started seeing a whole bunch of stuff on Facebook and online about their system not being secure and that a lot of people's credit card information was stolen. So putting those two together, there's just a whole lot about Aztec that just makes me uncomfortable. If you want to take that risk, that's up to you. It's not one of the companies that I would recommend. And if anything, I would discourage you from ordering from them. I don't have anything against them personally. It's just that, you know, for me, having oils that I can't use and then having credit card information stolen, it's just not worth the headache for the 1 or 2 fragrances that I actually like from them. Where do you get your micas from? So all of the mica powders that I have ordered have been from Amazon. If you're looking for larger, I like to buy the sample packs and play around with them and try different companies. But Mad Micas, I've heard, is really great for buying mica powder. How many freshies does 1 pound of beads make? So this is going to depend a lot on the size of the cutters that you're using or the molds that you're using. But generally out of 1 pound, I can get about 7 or 8 freshies out of that, if that helps. Can freshies melt in your car? Yes, they can. In extreme heat, they can melt just like they do in your oven. Now, there are some things that you can do to attempt to prevent this. No one really knows why some of them melt and others don't. You know, some freshie makers, their car and their husband's car are sitting right next to each other all day and theirs melts and their husband's didn't. Why? We've all been in the group trying to put together, you know, well, what kind of micas did you use? What fragrance was it? You know, what was the temperature outside? What color was the freshie? All these things, trying to find a common thread to try to avoid or try to figure out how to make them not melt. Most of the time, them melting has nothing to do with anything that you've done. You haven't done anything wrong. Just under the right circumstances, they can get soft and melt. That's what they do in the oven. So of course, your car being, especially if you live in the South, it can get hot enough in your car that I think it's like 170 degrees is like the melting point for these beads. But even just a little bit, getting a little bit close to that inside of a vehicle, the beads will start to get soft and the weight of it hanging on the string can melt it off the string. One thing that you can do to avoid that is be sure not to catch it between your sunscreen and the windshield. Always make sure it's behind the sunscreen. Also, in the summer months, avoid dark colors. Dark colors, black, purple, brown, those deep dark colors attract and absorb heat. And so it's going to actually get hotter than one that would be a lighter color. So I always avoid dark colors in the summer in hopes that that will bring down the chances of it melting. Also, if you're concerned about this, and if you're making freshies, you should be, include a warning label, either on your packaging or in your packaging, explaining to always hang, don't leave it on the dash. If it's sitting on the dash, it's even more likely to melt. Don't get it caught between the visor. Don't park in direct sunlight. That's another thing. All of these things can go on a warning label. I can share in the description exactly what my warning labels say, and you can also, you know, add anything or take away anything that you would like from that. But it's always a good idea to add a warning label. It does not completely get rid of your risk of something happening, somebody wanting to sue or asking for damages or whatever. It does not cover you completely, but it does at least give you some basis for misuse. If they laid it on their dash when it specifically says don't lay on their dash, you know, at least you've got a little bit of a case that you tried to warn them and they didn't follow the warning, and therefore there is some liability on their part. Once again, it's not going to completely cover you, but it's a good start. And, you know, you don't want your customers to have damages. You don't want to damage their property, and even if you don't have to pay for it, you don't want that. So allowing them to have a little instruction sheet so that they know how to properly use it so they can avoid that situation and that headache is helpful. How do you clean your jars? I personally, if I have a ton of empty jars and I want to wash them all quickly, I will throw them in my dishwasher. I did this once with dishes that I was washing, and I recommend not doing that because I could smell the fragrance on my dishes after I wash the jars. So I always make sure that I just do the jars by themselves. And then the next load of dishes that I do, I haven't noticed any kind of fragrance or anything being left over at that point. But definitely don't wash them with your dishes, but they can go in the dishwasher. And I put the lids, both the top lid and the ring in there, and the jars. If I only have a couple of jars that I need to clean, I'll just hand wash them with dish soap and hot water. And sometimes I'll let them soak in the sink for a minute before I wash them. And I've never noticed, you still may be able to smell some of the fragrance, especially on the part of the lid that's got the rubber seal because it is absorbed into the rubber. But I have never noticed any cross-contamination between fragrances. If you're concerned about it, one thing you can do is to always mix similar scents into the same jar with the same lid. So you'll be able to smell it, and if you can tell it's black ice, then, you know, mix a masculine scent in that instead of like a lighter feminine scent, because you might get some. Once again, I've never had any cross-contamination with fragrances once the jar has been washed, so I don't think it's a huge deal. But if you are worried about it, just keep tropical scents with tropical scents and fruity scents with fruity scents. Sometimes I don't even wash my jar between fragrances. If I'm going from one really tropical scent to another really tropical scent, I don't even worry about washing the jar because it's not going to rub off enough to change another fragrance that is already so similar. Can you use fragrance oils from Hobby Lobby? The ones in the candle section? Yes, you can. Those are for making candles. They're exactly the same thing that you would get from a candle company. And so therefore, yes, they are going to be much more expensive per ounce. So I don't recommend getting your oils from there, or your costs are going to be sky high. Can you use the oils from Walmart? There are two types of oils at Walmart. One is a burning oil or a warming oil, and the other one is 100% fragrance oil. So the one that is 100% fragrance oil, yes, you can use. Once again, that's the same thing that you're going to be buying from candle companies. Do I personally think that you should? Some people really love them. Some people have said they don't last as long and they're not as quality. I'm on that side of, I did buy some, I did test them out, and I wasn't impressed. I don't feel like the quality is on par with the candle companies that I order from. And I'm really trying to create a product that is, you know, the best that I can make. So buying the oils from Walmart, unless you're in a pinch and you just need some oil, then I say okay. But my suggestion is always order from a candle company or someone like Buy It, Ship It, or Stay Fresh with Peanut, who you know, sells the fragrance oils that really work with these beads and that are high quality. Can you use the ones from Amazon? Yes, there's one company, I think it's Nature's Garden, that you can get on Amazon, and I've heard that they're really good. I've never used them. Other fragrance oils, I would question. Just, once again, just order from the candle companies. It's so much easier, and you know what you're getting. Can you bake different fragrances all at the same time? Yes, you can. They will not cross-contaminate. So if you've got a leather in one cookie cutter and right next to it you have black ice, you will not smell the other, like you won't smell black ice on the leather freshie. They don't absorb other fragrances while in the oven with each other. So you've got 15 different fragrances on there, go for it, you're good. Can you use essential oils? No. For starters, it's the amount of oil that you need would get really expensive with essential oils. If you wanted to do that and spend the extra money, then that would be up to you. But essential oils have a lower, is it either flash point or boiling point, or something that they can't be heated in the oven at the temperature you need to heat these. They basically just evaporate, burn off. I think it's also really, I think there's something really bad about burning them at that temperature. There was something, I found it online. I don't remember exactly what it is, but definitely do not do essential oils. I've had the question asked, I've had my beads soaking for 2 weeks. Why are they not absorbing the oil? Now, this could depend on the fragrance oil. It could also depend on the temperature of your house. It could depend on which fragrance it is. So if you've maybe not gotten a quality oil, it may never absorb. There may be something in there, an oil that can't penetrate the beads, and so that oil is never gonna actually absorb into the beads. This is what happens when some people have ordered from Amazon, like some random oils on Amazon, because they're not intended for candle making, or they're not 100% fragrance oil, so they've been cut with something that doesn't work with the beads, doesn't work for freshie making. Also, the cooler it is in your house, the longer it's going to take for your beads to dry. If you're having a problem with them drying, you don't want to heat your house up. I mean, especially if it's summer, you don't want it to be hot in your house. So you can cut off one room. So for me, in the summertime, I will close the door to my laundry room, and I'll put a space heater in there, and I'll put all my jars in there, and I'll heat it to like 80 or 85 degrees. And it really helps that oil to absorb really quickly. Another alternative to that, and something that I've actually started doing more, is putting them out in the sun. And I'll go over that reason here in a second, but heating them will cause them to dry faster, which is a good thing. So the other thing is the fragrance that it is. Not necessarily the quality of the oil, but the fragrance of the oil makes a difference as well. Leathers, anything mixed with leather, typically will take longer than your other fragrances. Anything with vanilla will take longer than your other fragrances. Not entirely sure why. I think it's the thickness of the oil. The thinner the oil is, the faster it will absorb. That's usually like citrus fragrances, or like very feminine floral or perfume type fragrances. They dry really quick. But anything that's like sweet, like I think cotton candy scents, those take forever too. So once again, just get them warmer, even if that means wrapping them in a heating pad. Anything that you can do to warm them up will even help those oils to absorb faster as well. Now, going into why I put mine out in the sun now, which is an issue that I ran into that I wasn't aware of, and I kind of feel silly because I know that I sold a lot of freshies that were probably really ugly after a week or two of hanging in someone's car. So when you put them in the sun, some fragrances, even though when you poured the oil in, it was completely clear, if you put it out in the sun, expose it to UV rays, it will turn the oil yellow. I was under the impression that this would only happen when the oil was still in liquid form. So I wasn't putting them out in the sun because I wanted white beads. Yellow is hard to cover with color, especially when I do a lot of my designs have white in it. I need my beads not to be bright yellow. I wasn't aware that once you bake it and it is exposed to UV light, that it's still gonna turn yellow. I had done a show, a little farmer's market, and I had them all out. And I noticed after about an hour that a couple of my white cows had turned bright yellow. So now, because I don't want something that's supposed to be white turning bright yellow in someone's car. So now I know I just dry my beads out in the sun, so I know which ones ahead of time are going to turn yellow. And therefore I can avoid doing designs where part of it needs to be white. I can avoid doing designs with that fragrance. And I'll just keep it, you know, darker colors that can cover that yellow. And then I don't have them turning colors in my customers' cars and looking not so cute. I have also somewhat taken advantage of some of them that I know are gonna turn yellow, and I did not put them out in the sun. So, and I mixed them as like a light pink. So I did like a light pink and gold pumpkin during just a couple months ago, knowing that the beads were gonna turn yellow once the sun started to hit it. And in someone's car, it's a more gradual process than if you have them out in the sun outside, because windows and cars do have some UV protection. So it does take longer for the Freshie to turn yellow in a car. But I've done some that were light pink and gold pumpkin that I knew the beads were gonna turn yellow. So the pink mixed with the yellow, I knew would eventually turn that pumpkin orange, which I thought the color changing thing was kind of a cool idea when you know that it's gonna turn into a color that's not, you know, awful. So sometimes I would make a blue Freshie knowing that the beads will turn yellow and it will turn it green. So I don't know, it was just kind of like a neat little thing that I did. But yeah, that's something that you can kind of play around with also, and even market it as color changing and list on there, you know, pink to orange or blue to green, and use that to your advantage. But for the most part, I just like to know which ones are going to turn yellow and then avoid an unintentional change in color once it's hung in my customers' cars. How do you attach your cardstock? So there's a couple of different ways to do this, and it is completely personal preference, however you want to do it. I have done it two different ways. First way is after it's baked, I will take the cardstock and just add some hot glue and glue it to the bumpy side. You can also do the same thing with the hot glue on the smooth side. But for me, I don't, if I want the cardstock on the smooth side, I will just bake it in. I will place the cardstock down, pour the beads on top, and bake it just as I normally would. And then when you pull it up, that cardstock is really nice, flat and flush with the smooth back, which looks really nice. And I've noticed that, especially with the round ones, people seem to prefer it to be on, customers seem to prefer for it to be on that back side and baked on. It just looks cleaner and nicer, but sometimes I want the bumpy side. It just adds to the effect of it. So on different styles that I do. So yeah, hot glue works just fine. I've never had my cardstock come off in the car from the heat or anything like that. So hot glue on the front, bake on the back.